people speak. We'll let people speak for about 5 minutes, and then we'll adjourn to refreshments out in the, what's that called, foyer? I don't, whatever that big room is out there where they'll have tables set up and you can talk individually to the candidates. So that's what we'll do in October, second Tuesday. All right. At this time, it is my honor to introduce Donna Waller. I think some of you probably are familiar with Donna already. She says she has friends in the audience. Donna taught at Santa Fe for over 30 years. She taught American government. And a few years ago, I asked her to speak to a retired teachers group. And they just loved her so much, they kept saying, have her back, have her back. So anyway, I'm glad to have her here. I'll turn the program over to Donna.
Thank you all. I have to say, Barbara Oberlander and a bunch of our friends and I will be back here for ILR for a class on presidential elections starting at the end of the month. So I hope to see a lot of you there. I'm going to do 2 sections, and the other people are great. They are great. So you guys are my second gig of the day. I was at the Senior Center. Today at the Senior Center, I did not wear my league cap. So someone else talked about the amendments, and then I finished with dreadful interpretation, I have to say. But tonight I have my league hat on, and what I'm going to do is just talk about the ballot amendments, because I'm assuming we all want to watch television at 9 o'clock. And I'm going to go in order. And then when I get to number 4, we have a guest speaker, Lindsay Coleman, who's going to take over for a few minutes and do number 4. And then I'll finish and rage at you about number 5, which happens to be my least favorite one of this cycle. We'll just go through them. And then I'm going to briefly, I know that I was billed as the constitutional amendments, but do you guys have somebody coming to talk about the 2 local ballot issues? No, then I'll talk about them. I was hoping you would say that. So here we go. There are 6 constitutional amendments on the ballot. And if you're new to Florida and you don't know this, let me be a bigoted political scientist. Hardly any of this belongs in the state constitution. But amending the state constitution is the only way that voters in Florida have to speak on an issue if the legislature does not choose to do it. And as a result of that, the Florida Constitution is, as I am fond of saying, full of garbage that does not belong in a governing document. But constitutional amendments are all that saves us sometimes. And what was that, June? What did you say? Yes, absolutely. There are 6 of them this time, and there are a variety of ways to get constitutional amendments on the ballot. And the major 2 ways are identified by these 6. 4 of them were put on by the state legislature, and 2 of them were put on by citizen initiatives. And there are different rules, by the way, of how each entity has to do it. If the legislature does it, it can be longer. It can be less clear. They have they hold the citizens to a much stricter standard than they hold themselves. And you can tell how I feel about that by the tone in my voice. Um, so this time, as I said, the state put 4 on, and I often say the state legislature does that when they want to legislate on a topic, but they don't want it to be their fault. Okay. They do not want to take responsibility for it. And that is the case with some of the ones that are on the amendment on this time, for sure, on the ballot. So amendment number 1, let's just jump right in. Amendment number 1 changes school board elections from nonpartisan to partisan elections. The legislature over the last few years has moved on what I have always thought of as the paramount local control item, which is control of schools. And they have moved to term limit school board members in the last few years. We have not had traditionally term limits for school board members in this area. And now they would like to change the election from partisan to nonpartisan. No, from nonpartisan to partisan. And that has some pluses and minuses. When I'm wearing my league hat and I talk about the amendments, what I usually do is say, here are the pluses, here are the minuses, here's what happens if you do it, here's what happens if you don't do it. So if you vote yes on Amendment 1, your school board elections will come with a partisan label. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Here's kind of how I think about it. School board elections are nonpartisan because theoretically there's no partisan way to teach kids to read or not. Okay, so just that way. But as we all know, school boards have kind of become the center of a lot of ideological contention. And so if this amendment passes, you will have partisan labels on school board candidates. And if you follow partisan politics, that will give you a clue about what policies a particular candidate might want to follow. People who have heard me speak out here before know I am kind of personally kind of a hardcore partisan. And when I looked at this, I thought, is this a good thing or a bad thing? It was put on the ballot by the Republican legislators. So clearly, they want to be able to recognize each other. But when I thought about how this might affect me personally here in Gainesville, I thought, that's not such a bad thing, right? Because I too am a fierce partisan and I follow school board politics and I know the meaning of what I just said to you. So if you feel that school board politics ought to be ideologically reflective either way, you're going to kind of like this. Okay, you're going to kind of like this. If you're new to Gainesville, you probably don't know, but those of us who live in Gainesville, partisan or nonpartisan, we always know who the candidates are and what they stand for. But in some of the other larger school board districts, a partisan label absolutely gives you a clue to what sorts of policies a school board candidate might or might not stand for. If you are a person that absolutely believes that education should be a nonpartisan matter and that ideological considerations should not enter into it, then you will vote no on this amendment. If you are a person that absolutely believes that there are ideological considerations that should come into play when we educate our children, then you will vote yes on this. And you will have clear guidance about which side is which. And you will not, as I have had to do, attend endless school board meetings to figure this out. It will be right in your face and clear when it happens. So Amendment 1 is is a pretty clear choice, and you can think about that one in a really kind of clear way. Amendment 2. Okay, you guys, any of you, or there's no one in this room smiling when I said that, so you must not know. What Amendment 2 does is to provide a constitutional right to hunt and fish by traditional methods in the state constitution. And if you are thinking to yourself, wow, don't we already have that in Florida? And don't we have a thing called the Fish and Game Commission that makes rules about where and how we can do that? The answer to that is yes. It's not embedded in the Constitution, but we do have this. And the amendment indicates that if it passes, it doesn't fool with the Fish and Wildlife Commission and any of their choices on it. Oh, no, you're so silly. Yes, please. Thank you. Okay. What you just saw is Tandy Birch, who is the head of the Speakers Bureau for the League chapter, and she is giving you cheat sheets on the amendment for you to fill out. And if you have a pen, it will help you a lot. Candy and I were at the earlier event, and we had dinner together, and I absolved her from coming here, and she just came to bring you these forms. So there you are. Well done. Thank you very much, Candy. What is it about this amendment? You know, what are the pluses of the fishing and wildlife, fishing and hunting amendment. Okay. Most people that I've talked to about this think of it as kind of symbolic, okay, kind of symbolic, but it has some kind of odd ramifications. The fact that it emphasizes traditional methods, okay, is problematic to a lot of people. In Florida, we have rules against gill netting, okay, in order to preserve the fish population. And that's a traditional method of catching fish. We don't allow steel traps for bears and raccoons and things like that. Also, a traditional method of hunting. And so, folks who are opposed to this amendment are kind of bothered by that phrase. And then there's another phrase in this amendment that is somewhat problematic. It indicates that hunting and fishing are the best method for population control for wildlife. If you talk to wildlife biologists, I guarantee you that if you say, what are the best methods for controlling, say, the black bear population, hunting and fishing are not going to be the first words that are going to come out of that person's mouth. And there are environmental groups that are concerned about that assertion that hunting and fishing are the best methods for controlling various wildlife populations. Because I know you guys, a lot of you, I'm going to take off my league hat for a minute. In Tallahassee, I said to people, so, you know, what is this one about? Okay, because it kind of came out of nowhere. And one person I asked that to said, oh, it's about the bear hunts. Okay, it's about the bear hunts. And if you don't know about that, you haven't been here long enough. And you'll look it up. Another legislator, who shall be unnamed, said to me, it's stand your ground for wildlife. Okay. For those of you who know the stand your ground law, I said, really? This legislator said, really? People want to be able to shoot those bears when they break into their houses. Okay. So I'll leave that one to your discretion. The league has no position on this one, and it's an odd one even for the Florida legislature is what I would say about that. Okay, Amendment 3. Okay. I'm going to try not to rant. Candy Birch did a wonderful presentation on the amendments today. And when she got through talking about Amendment 3, I stood up and began to rant about the ad against Amendment 3 that doubtless you folks have seen on your television sets. And if you haven't seen it, it is clearly state generated, is what I would say. And it indicates that if you vote for Amendment 3, what you are voting for is monopolies by a small group of profit seeking people who have pushed this amendment. Okay. And that is about a quarter true. If you know much about Amendment 3, you know that one of the biggest medical marijuana dispensary groups put up most of the money to get this amendment passed. And that's what that ad indicates, is that the dispensaries that do the medical dispensing are monopolies, and they're pushing this so they can make more money. And the only problem with that is that it was the Florida legislature that gave them that monopoly when they passed the medical marijuana bill. I literally picked up a pillow and threw it at my television set when I first saw this, because it doesn't have to be that way. What will happen is, if recreational marijuana passes, the legislature will have to go back and pass a whole set of regulations about who can sell, who can dispense, how much people can grow, all of those kinds of things. They'll have to do it. They did it with medical, and their choice with medical was to choose several corporations and to pretty much give them the monopoly. It doesn't have to be that way. The legislature will be able to pass any sort of enabling regulations that they wish to. Okay. So the pluses: a huge financial win for the state. Forgot about this. I brought you something. Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't. Okay. If you saw the Gainesville Sun last week, the whole text of all the amendments was published one day last week, and I urge you to take a look at it. Amendment 3 was the most interesting because it simply took the existing medical marijuana statute and added and subtracted different things to it. And that was all put in play by the legislature. So the pluses, okay. The pluses are that Florida, if recreational marijuana is legalized, as it is in 24 states, the state of Florida is likely to gain somewhere between $1.5 million and $4.5 million a year in tax revenue. That has been the way it's played out in other states. And most people think of that as a plus, especially if you know that most of the legislature's discretionary funds, okay, the budget, part of the budget is discretionary, part of the budget is not. Most of the discretionary funds go into social programs. Social programs, education, stuff that we like. So that's a plus. Another plus is a great number of people who have been criminals most of their adult lives will never be again. And I personally think of that as a plus as well. The minuses are the minuses you've heard in the debate about medical. And now, actually, because 24 states have legalized, we have some data that indicates that legalizing marijuana does not hook a lot of kids, does not act as a gateway drug. Um, the easiest analogy I would give you, and this is definitely a plus and a minus in a lot of ways, is you could think of it in the same way that you would think of other legal drugs like alcohol. And it does not appear that more kids are smoking pot in Colorado than did before it was legalized. Um, so the real way to decide this is on the basis of your own personal beliefs about substance use of all kinds, and on the basis of the fact that right now there are almost 3 million Floridians with medical marijuana licenses, and the issue of whether it should be legal for the rest of the population or not is really what's at odds with this one. The league has no position about this, and there's a history with that. You know, when the state league takes a position on an issue like this, they have to have what's called a consensus meeting, and you have to literally reach consensus on the issue. And that does not mean majority rule. It's an amazing, wonderful, horrible process to go through a league consensus meeting. And the league has done it over the issue of marijuana legalization twice, twice. And neither time could the league come to a consensus about this issue. So it is, everyone knows the pluses and the minuses. The league has no stance on it. And you will have to decide that according to your own personal consciences and habits. Okay. And here comes number 4.
All right, thank you. I'm a visual learner. Anyone else visual learners? Yeah, so I have a slide deck that I'm going to share with you all. Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Coleman. I am the daughter of Linda and Clayton Coleman, who are here in the audience. And I reached out a while back to say I would love to come to Hammock and talk about Amendment 4, and learned that this was happening. So I just plugged right in. I'm not a part of the League of Women Voters. I'm here representing Yes on 4. However, the League of Women Voters did reach consensus over this issue, and it was yes. So I just want to give you a little bit of background of where we're at right now. So this past May went into effect a 6-week abortion ban. That's a near total ban. It restricts care before many people even realize that they're pregnant. Usually it's about 5 weeks, maybe. My first child, I didn't know until I was 9 months pregnant. And that's when I realized and took my first pregnancy test. There's no real exceptions to this ban. The exceptions around rape and incest aren't really going into effect because it requires police reports. It requires all of these sort of loops and things that people need to jump through that really aren't realistic. And so what we're seeing as this ban has been put in place here and in other states, that these exceptions aren't real. They're not actually happening in the imperfect world that we live in. The thing is, too, to know about this is that the majority of Floridians disagree. This has become a partisan issue even though we know that it has bipartisan support. It's just in the current political climate that we're operating in, it becomes really popular to side based on your partisan politics. But the truth is, when we poll people and Floridians, most agree that this ban is an extreme ban that shouldn't be there. This ban impacts anyone who can get pregnant. That's me, that's your daughters, that's your granddaughters. This is very real. And I will say too, I was pregnant with my second child when this went into effect. So it's particularly scary. So I thought to myself, will it be a healthy pregnancy? I won't know at 6 weeks. I didn't even know I was pregnant at the time. And so it's a really very palpable issue for any woman of childbearing age. And we all know someone who this impacts. The reality is, politicians are not doctors. The government should not be interfering with medical decisions. I gave this presentation a few weeks back to a crowd. Someone raised their hand and said, politicians are not doctors, and doctors are not lawyers. Because how this plays out in the emergency room is that when women come in hemorrhaging, when they come in and they're about to have a miscarriage and they need an abortion and it's the legal area is sort of unclear, does this fit, does this not fit? Women are bleeding out. And we know that it happened in Texas. A woman had a miscarriage, she lost liters of blood before anyone would help her. Doctors are not lawyers. Politicians are not doctors. I think most people can agree that politics should not be in the medical room with us. So this is the language around the amendment, and I thought it was important to show you all very specifically what it says, just to avoid any misinformation as this comes out in commercial ads. Someone already mentioned that earlier. As this comes out when you're talking about it in community and with people in your life, it is very clear that what this amendment says is that no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. This amendment does not change the legislature's constitutional authority to require notification to a parent or guardian before a minor has an abortion. So in real terms, that just means it goes back to the way it was Roe v. Wade. This has nothing to do with late-term abortions. This has nothing to do with parental consent. All of those things were in place. This has to do with viability, which is exactly what Roe v. Wade said. So vote yes. Yes on 4 is a coalition of partners across Florida. And just wanted to make a little note here. There's 55 days until the election. That's not a lot of time. And we know that we need 60% to vote yes. Luckily, the polls are in our favor at this point in time. However, we know from statewide campaigns in other states and in Florida that as time passes and the opposition becomes more organized, those numbers fluctuate. And so it's important to be talking about this issue with people in your life. Relational organizing is the only way that this will pass. So with that, thank you all for having me. Happy to answer any questions, or should I just pass the mic back afterwards? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so I have to add another pillow throwing moment. If you haven't seen it, there's also an anti-amendment 4 ad that indicates there's no restriction on the time of when you can get an abortion. It's a really scary one. And it was particularly irritating to me because I'm from the women's health movement from before. And viability has a date, 24 weeks. Okay. When you see that on there, and that was the Roe measure, where it says viability, and you see that ad that says there's no limit to this people will be able to kill their children, and I have actually already heard that. It's frightening and bizarre. What you need to say in response is no. Viability in a medical sense has a definition. It's a fact. 24 weeks, period. And you folks should be hitting back on that hard. But it that the ads against the two popular initiatives have already caused me to start swearing at my TV set. And, it is just because they're simply not true. They're simply not true. And you have to fight back against that. Is that a wrong thing? You're laughing at me. Oh, oh no. I don't know if you guys are a fan of old TV, but one of my favorite TV series ever was Miami Vice. And there's a particular episode where he shoots his TV set out. And I turned to my partner when I saw the Amendment 4 ad the other day, and I said, oh, this could be me and Elvis shooting the TV set out right here. I was flabbergasted by the fact that they would actually say that, you know. So, and yes, the league absolutely supports Amendment 4. We collected petitions for it. So that is definitely on the ease one. Now here comes a non-spectacular, boring, perfectly horrible one. Okay, that's Amendment 5. Okay, Amendment 5, on the face of it, is one that ought to make every homeowner in Florida go, yes, I'm going to get money. And that means that either they haven't been watching what I now call the war on local government from the state, or they aren't clear about how thoroughly devious the Florida legislature can be. Okay. It's like anybody in here who's a legislator, just feel free to throw stuff at me. But what Amendment 5 does is it suggests that we link our homestead exemptions to the consumer price index, and that if we have runaway inflation, our homestead exemptions should rise to help offset that. Okay. Lovely, right? You know, more money in the hands of people who pay property taxes if inflation rises. Okay. The only problem with that is that the state gets no revenue from property taxes. Your county and city governments are funded by property taxes. And if you haven't noticed this, I'll just be direct. The state of Florida has been at war against local government in a huge variety of ways over the last 8 years or so. And this is a part of it. What this amendment says is every year in January, they will look at the consumer price index. And if private businesses, because this is really how you should think about this. I cannot imagine who thought this up. Okay. You guys grocery shop, right? Some of you who don't eat here go to Publix, right? So grocery prices are high, in case you haven't noticed that. And this year, the Publix Corporation made record billions of profits. Okay. What this amendment essentially says is that if corporate entities decide to raise their prices and cause inflation, we're going to offset that by destroying your state and local government and denying them revenue. That's the real meaning of Amendment 5. Okay, I'm looking at June Gerard here because she's one of my mentors, and I hope she's nodding her head because she agrees with that assessment, because that's exactly what it's about. And a thing nobody else is talking about, but it occurred to me because I'm actually well acquainted with our property appraiser in this county. If you don't know her, you should make her acquaintance. She's a very interesting person. But one of the things that occurred to me is every property appraiser in the state of Florida, every January, will have to renew every single homestead exemption in the county. Okay, this is an annual thing that they're trying to do. And there's not a big staff over there, I promise you. And that was one that I haven't heard anybody talk about, is the fact that the property appraisers here think that they're going to go crazy if this one passes, because every single solitary year they'll have to review everybody's homestead exemption according to what the consumer price index is. And the consumer price index, of course, is at the mercy of private businesses. It has nothing to do with government at all. I urge you to, I understand perfectly well that many, many people will get a personal benefit from this if it passes, but the harm to your communities and your counties will be incalculable. And what this is really about is the state war against the local governments. Somebody in Tallahassee this year told me that they wished they could do away with property taxes altogether and simply assign chunks of money to the counties and the cities to operate on. Okay. You don't want that, I promise you. Okay. No, the league does not on this one. The league does not on this one. And then last, but not least, but the easiest one, Florida has a rule for public financing of campaigns. Not too many people do it because you have to be held to pretty stringent spending limits in order to get public financing. But it's a way in which people who don't have a whole lot of money can fund a campaign and start if they're not, backed by corporate interests or something like that. And what Amendment 6 does is to do away with Florida's public financing law. And not too many people take advantage of it. But when I saw that this had happened, I instantly started researching who had gotten on their nerves, who who had taken public financing and made themselves a gadfly that had made somebody say, let's do away with this, because it's a minuscule part of the state government, and it isn't used very much because you have to hold your campaign to spending limits if you take it. But Amendment 6 says do away with it. The league says no. I say no, even though it isn't used very often. It is a way to level the playing field in a monetary sense. And so that's Amendment 6. Okay. Those are the state amendments to the Constitution. And I'll leave it to you to go back through. Think about what I said at the beginning about how some of these are things that really should be done by statutes in the legislature. And I'll leave it to you to go through and think about which ones those might be. I mean, they can tinker with the homestead exemption all by themselves without a constitutional amendment. So why would that have to be a part of the Florida Constitution in that way? And I promise you, once something goes in the Constitution, you will play hell forever getting it out. That's part of what the purpose of all of these is. So that's the state ones. You'll also see one here. Here you'll see one ballot issue. If you live, you guys are not in the city limits, right? You are in the city limits. Okay, so you guys get two. You guys get two ballot issues locally. The first one will be a referendum to return the county commission seats to at-large voting. Okay. Up until last year, we elected all of our county commissioners at large. And what that means is all of us got to vote for all of them. Through what I can really only call nasty, misleading political tactics, the state legislators from this area last year, 2 years ago, put a referendum on the ballot to change the county commission seats to district seats. And because of some terribly misleading and borderline illegal tactics, that passed by 2,500 votes. A lot of the citizens of this county hate it. I have to say, I hate it. I am personally acquainted with all of the county commissioners. I like it that they are all elected at large and see themselves as all representing the entire county. That has given the county the ability to make policy in a coherent way for a very long time. And this is the first year when so the people who support the district voting will tell you it's more representative because you have a representative for your district and you vote for them and they are beholden to you. Okay. Representation is in the eye of the beholder. This year, I don't get to vote for a single county commissioner because of the way it has played out. I don't see that as very representative. in a lot of different ways. So the issue with that one is it better to elect one commissioner from one district to represent that district? Or is it better for all the commissioners to be elected by the entire county? And I have to say, from living in this county for 44 years and watching them in action, that I greatly support the at-large voting, and so does the local league chapter. Okay. You will see league people out supporting this one. And then the very last thing on your ballot, and please, when you vote, read the entire ballot and vote all the down offices and amendments. The last thing on your ballot will be what is familiarly known in the county, in the city, as the GRU amendment. And that is an amendment that does not, and when you get your ballot, you won't see the word GRU on it at all. What it simply does is to nullify the amendment that the state made to our city charter in order to have the governor take over our municipal utility. And that is exactly what occurred. That's as clearly as I can put it. And on the ballot, the last thing will be asking you to vote to get rid of that amendment. And by doing so, you will return the control of GRU back, oh goodness, back to the city commission in Gainesville. And one of the things I would strongly recommend, because I know that you guys care about this, is that you bring somebody out from that campaign to talk. Today we had Bobby Murmer at the senior center, and he did a wonderful job of exploding all the myths about what's actually happened at GRU. It's a very complicated matter, but there too, the local league with the support of the state league is absolutely in support of our municipal utility. So you will please vote to return the control of GRU to the city of Gainesville, which is where it belongs. So that's it for the ballot issues. Do you folks have any questions, comments? Okay. Here.
I want to know how in the world any vote here is going to change something that the state did without our request in the beginning. That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, okay. Are you talking about the GRU? Oh, okay. Okay, it's not going to end it. All right, is one of the things I would say about that. It is definitely going to end up in court, but I'm glad and sorry you asked this question, because because it actually really goes to the issue of our city charter, and whether the state can simply move in and nullify large chunks of it. And if we vote to take it back, they'll have to prove in a court somewhere that they have the capacity for no reason to simply come in and change the city charter without the citizens of this city agreeing. And so, to be honest with you, I think voting to knock that out of the charter will then throw them into court over the issue of what they can and cannot do with city charters. They've actually never done anything like this before. We are the only municipality in the entire state where the governor runs the utility and has simply stepped in to do that. And that amendment saying that we're knocking that out is, I'm sure they're not going to go away. Or maybe they will after November. A lot depends on what they see their chances of continuing to do this to be. And I think that it's a good step to kind of knock them back. Is that kind of an answer to your question there? I mean, well. Mm-hmm. 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 But we will have legal standing for sure.
This isn't a question, it's just a comment, and I'm playing devil's advocate with what you said. You said there was no reason for the state to step in, and the reason was misappropriation of the funds that the city was using of GRU money. So,
oh, I wish you had been at Bobby Murmer's thing today. He had some pieces where he said he busted misinformation. And one of the big pieces of that was about the transfers from GRU to the city. And what you just said is, I don't want to say it's not true, but it's been portrayed as far more damaging and problematic, both to GRU and the economy of the city, than most people guess. And the irony is the size of the transfer in game was smaller at the time it came under attack than any transfer from any other municipality in the state. And there are 30 of them. And now, because of what it's occurred, it is absolutely the lowest transfer. But there was nothing illegal about that transfer. And the fact that we've been made to think that is really a matter that's kind of problematic. We can argue about how much of that was fair or not fair or warranted, but it was never out of keeping with the policies of municipalities all across this state. I promise you, Gainesville was a particular target for a particular reason. And that I think what I wish you folks would do is bring somebody out here to talk about this issue, because it deserves, I mean, I was amazed by some of what Bobby did today.
I would think Gainesville was a target because it's very blue. And another question, if this goes to the courts, what are the chances, given the courts have been stacked with partisan just judges?
Okay, we talked about that a little bit this afternoon. Kind of 50-50. So far, the ones that have been dismissed, the judges have said they weren't going to deal with the merits of it, and they've simply cast it aside. In the federal courts here, there are some judges who are willing to discuss the merits of what this is about. And I personally don't think it's wasted time. Okay, I don't think it's wasted time.
Someone just asked me, are we voting on a 1 mil tax for schools? Is that going to be?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And why I left that.
Thanks to
out,
Alice.
I don't know. I forget about that because it's not a new tax. And it's simply a renewal of something we've done twice before. But yes, that'll be next to last on the ballot, is the 1 mil for schools.
All right.
And of course, we support that.
Maybe 2 more
Always.
questions. Do we have a couple people? Anyone? Anyone? Oh, you did such a great job, Donna.
And it's because we all want to go watch television. You should.